Hello, BookTube. Well, it's that most melancholy moment. It's the last mail haul of the week. A little extra melancholy for me because I just had a guest, an old friend, a bookish old friend, one of the only other full-time professional book critics in the country. And we spent a wonderful evening stuffing our faces and comparing notes about all sorts of things. Uh, but the day has been wonderful as well. Beautiful, bright, wonderful blue sky day. Uh, I took the bean on a long walk in the woods and came back, cleaned us both up, and then spent a wonderful time just sort of laying on the couch. It's just laying on the couch reading. Shouldn't really do that considering that I'm going to devote my whole night to reading. That time should be spent writing, but I didn't feel like it. I felt like just laying there, turning the pages of the book with one hand and fussing with the bean's fur on the other. And I make no apologies. So we've got a small stack of books here. I think there's a box in here somewhere. And let's just dig right in and see what we find. I'm assuming that quite a few of these things are going to be November finished copies, because Sam and I went through my book last night, and we remade the work shelf, the top work shelf. It was a brutal process of attrition. We moved out all of the October books, and I made a separate pile of 10 or 11 October books that I want to review before the month is over, and then moved up all of the November books and all of the December books, because December is a kind of a short month. There probably won't be that many copies of anything. So the December books are one stack on the end, and then there's the weekly stack, the weekly releases of November releases. And everything below it, the whole bookcase below it now, below that top shelf, is 2020. Amazing. I remember when I got my first 2020 book. Anyway, yeah, okay, so this is an example. This is a November book. This is The Accursed Tower, The Fall of Acre, and the End of the Crusades by Roger Crowley. We saw this. If these are all November finished copies, we'll have seen all of these things. This is the 1291 Siege of Acre was the Alamo of the Christian Crusades, the final bloody battle for the Holy Land. After a desperate siege of 6 weeks, the last Christian stronghold in the Holy Land fell to the Mamluk army on May 18th, 1291. And that's what this is. It's just a fine scale crusade history. And I've mentioned on this channel before that the Crusades as a historical period just don't tend to do it for me. I don't know why that is. I know they have fanatical fans. That is warming. That situation is slowly changing. The more great Crusade books I read, the more that is changing. The more I'm starting to become interested in the personalities and in the different takes of different historians, proving that really there is no, for me anyway, really there is no such thing as a period of history that just doesn't do it for me. I might use that phrase, but really it's just that I don't know enough about it, and that the more I know about it, the more interested I will become in it. I've had that happen enough times so that I really ought to know that by now. So let's see. Okay, all right. Yes, it's another November release. This was a terrific book. Already read it. Glad to read it again. This is by Mo Moulton, and it is The Mutual Admiration Society. How Dorothy Sayers and her Oxford Circle remade the world for women. And as subtitles tend to do, it's kind of their job description that overstates, but not uncritically. So I mean, this is a very interesting book. If you're a fan of Dorothy Sayers, and of course you are, then you're gonna love this book. Let's see here. Although it did remind me when I was reading it, that we currently lack a big definitive 800-page biography of Dorothy Sayers that I know of. And that's a shame. That ought not to be true. There are huge sections of her life that aren't comparatively well studied outside of Dorothy Sayers newsletters or mystery specialty nonfiction periodicals. But for the general reading public that will know her name and will have read her books, that biography does not exist as far as I know. Let's see here. It began in a quiet way over hot cocoa in a student room at Somerville College, Oxford in 1912. In the firelight, a group of first-year students gathered to read aloud our literary efforts and receive and deliver criticism. Named the Mutual Admiration Society by its most famous member, Dorothy Sayers, the Mutual Admiration Society supported each other boldly and empathetically without false modesty or feminine shame. I thought this was terrific. It reminded me in some ways of a book that came out. When did The Inklings come out? It was a few years ago. The C.S. Lewis group of writers, but written much better. Let's find out who Mo Moulton is. The author of the Toast column, Watching Downton Abbey with a Historian, and currently a senior lecturer in the history department at the University of Birmingham. And also a terrific writer. That was the main thing that struck me about this, was how enjoyable it was to read. To learn all this was interesting in its own way, but it was also told as a good story. So great. I'm glad to have the finished copy. I will go at it again. I love rereading stuff like this. So let's see. I guess we'll get all this cardboard out of the way first. These will all, I'm sure, be November releases. The finished copies of November books. Yeah, okay, this is another finished copy of another November book. This is, I don't remember if we ever saw this on this channel. This is by Richard Brookhiser, and this is Give Me Liberty, A History of America's Exceptional Idea. There's the cracked Liberty Bell. From the United States to Hungary to China, nationalism is all the rage. India's Modi conflates nationalism with Hinduism, while Vladimir Putin... oh God, a list of bad guys. Invoke nationalism to make their countries one-party states. In our country, that is meaning the United States, here it comes, Donald Trump is pursuing an aggressive nationalist agenda focused on securing our borders from outsiders and protecting American industry. That is not true. That is not true. And we are in the end stages of this apocalypse. There is no longer any good to be served by writing namby-pamby nonsense like that. If we don't start calling a spade, we are going to die. All of us are going to die, not just Americans. That is not true. Neither one of those things is true. Donald Trump doesn't care about American industry, and most of the efforts that he's made along those lines have hurt American industry, not helped it. And this is not a question focused on securing our national borders. It's racism. That's all that it is. It's racism. He doesn't like brown people. There have been no efforts to secure the northern border, where more illegal immigrants come by a factor of 10 than the southern border. There have been no efforts to do that, nor would there be. If you were to ask Donald Trump, he would say, I don't see anything wrong with those people. He's plenty wrong with the people on the southern border. It's only racism. That's all it is. It's not securing our borders. He doesn't care about that. Anyway, as award-winning journalist and biographer and National Review senior editor Richard Brookhiser sees it, we are living through a troubled time when both the right and left have lost sight of the unique character of America's nationalism, its concern for liberty. Brookhiser examines 13 essential documents from our country's history to offer a truer and more inspiring story of American nationalism as it evolved over 400 years. Okay. I don't know. I don't remember off the top of my head if I even, or actually off the top of my head or over my shoulder, I don't remember if I have an advanced copy of this thing. But I know I haven't read it, so. And it's a November book. I will be concentrating on writing some reviews for the remaining October books, but then my attention turns right away to November. Keep in mind, November is the month on BookTube of many, many events. 3 really concern us here. The first being your second mandatory read-along on this channel. I don't abuse my power. I am a benevolent dictator. I don't make mandatory read-alongs every single week or every single day. I could do that, but I don't. I have sympathy for your lives and your loved ones. This is only my second mandatory read-along. The first one was Pride and Prejudice. I realized there were people out there, some of whom were listening to my videos, who have never read Pride and Prejudice. We've now fixed that. I did a mandatory read-along. Everyone had to do it. Not just BookTube, but all of YouTube. Keemstar, the beauty channels, all of them. And not just YouTube, but the whole world. My mandatory read-alongs are epic, seismic events. And the next one we're doing is in November, and that is The Origin of the Species by Charles Darwin. That's event number 1. Event number 2, of course, is NaNoWriMo, National Novel Writing Month, where we are all coming together to write that novel that has been gnawing at us. But the third event is Nonfiction November, the Mighty Olive at a Book Olive is hosting Nonfiction November for the 5th year in a row. And it's an event in which you are encouraged to read some nonfiction if you read none at all, and to read more if you read some. And there are a few outliers. There are a few renegade outliers in support of that event who are taking it one step further. Not just Nonfiction November, but nothing but Nonfiction November, and where we read only nonfiction in the month of November, and I am doing that. So I've got my work cut out for me. These books are only going to remind me of that. Let's see what this next one is. This one is not one of these big cardboard things, so it might not be. It might be an advance copy. It is. Look at that. It is an advance copy. All right, so this is a 2020 book, and I now have a space for this. I have shelves for 2020, month by month. So strange. Okay, so this is a biography. This comes out in March. This is by Kimberly Hamlin, and it is Free Thinker, Sex, Suffrage, and the Extraordinary Life of Helen Hamilton Gardner. No working cover yet. She is a professor at Miami University in Ohio. Exposed in Ohio newspapers for an affair with a married man, Alice Chenoweth refused to cower in shame. Instead, she changed her name to Helen Hamilton Gardner, moved to New York, pretended to be married to her lover, and became a wildly popular lecturer and author, brazenly opposed to sexist piety and propriety. The, quote, Harriet Beecher Stowe of fallen women. She supported raising the age of sexual consent for girls from 12 or younger, decried double standards of sexual morality, and debunked scientists' claims that women's brains were inferior. With liberal doses of feminine charm, Gardner networked tirelessly to persuade Woodrow Wilson and other male politicians to support the 19th Amendment. Her effort, according to suffrage leader Carrie Pitt, was the most potent factor in its passage. Wow, okay, can't wait to see what this thing looks like. That's wonderful, though. So this comes out in March. I don't have to think about it, but it is a biography in the new year. I haven't seen many of those. Let's see what this next one is. This is also an advanced copy of something. Oh, okay, great. This is 2020, but this is right around the corner. This is January. This is by Erica Fatland, and this is Sovietistan. Travels in Turkmenistan, Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, and Uzbekistan. Sovietistan. How do you like that? All of those countries became free of the Soviet Union in 1991. But though they are new to modern statehood, this is a region rich in ancient history, culture, and landscapes unlike anything anywhere else in the world. Traveling alone, Erica Fatland is a true adventurer in every sense. In Sovietistan, she takes the reader on a compassionate and insightful journey to explore how their Soviet heritage has influenced these countries, whose governments experiment with both democracy and dictatorship. She travels incognito through Turkmenistan, a country that is closed to journalists. She meets exhausted human rights activists in Kazakhstan, survivors of the massacre of Osh in 2010, and German Mennonites who found paradise on the Kyrgyzstan plains 200 years ago. We learn how ancient customs clash with gas production and witness the underlying conflicts between ethnic Russians and the majority in a country that is slowly building its future in nationalist colors. Fantastic. This is going to get reviewed everywhere, I believe. Let's see here. So that's right at the beginning of the year. January 7th. I might not even be back by then. But at least it'll be on the shelf. It'll be on the shelf and ready. So let's see what this next one is. Oh, another advanced copy. Okay, great. Fantastic. All right, this is more nonfiction. That's great. We haven't had any fiction yet, right? No, we haven't. This is, I think, a January release as well. No, February. This is late February. This is Citizen Reporters. S.S. McClure, Ida Tarbell, and the Magazine That Rewrote America by Stephanie Gorton. Citizen Reporters. It's not hard to imagine a time when the United States was deeply divided politically, when wealth inequality was never higher, and when the President of the United States made headlines through the world for publicly attacking the press, denouncing reporters who threatened his reputation as forces of evil. But the year I'm describing is not 2019, but 1906. And the president is Theodore Roosevelt, directing most of his ire at McClure's magazine. In this book, Stephanie Gorton traces the fascinating history of the rise and fall of this influential Gilded Age magazine and the two unlikely outsiders at its helm. One of the most influential magazines in American history, McClure's drew over 400,000 readers at its peak, far more than its rivals at the time, including Harper's Monthly and The Atlantic. McClure's published the groundbreaking stories that defined the Gilded Age, including the investigation of Standard Oil that toppled the Rockefeller monopoly. Driving this revolutionary publication were two improbable newcomers united by single-minded ambition. S.S. McClure was an Irish immigrant who, despite bouts of mania, overthrew his impoverished upbringing and bent the New York media world to his will. His steadying hand and star reporter was Ida Tarbell, a woman who defied gender expectations and became notoriously a fearless journalist. Fantastic. Well, Ida Tarbell is a bottomlessly fascinating subject. So even if McClure turns out to be not, it won't matter. Great. Okay, fantastic. And then we have the box, and then we're done, and that's good because it looks like my Holy Father in heaven is calling me home, and so I'll have to go. So let's see what this last one is. It's a box, but it's very thin and it's very light, so I don't know how much to expect here. What have we got? What have we got here? Oh, okay, great. All right, we've seen this before. Not this book, but this series. This is a series from Princeton University Press where it's the lives of the great religious books, and they just take the book and get an author to study that book and do a sort of a literary life. And the latest one that they're doing, this is by Martin Goodman, and the latest one they're doing is The Jewish War by Josephus. Fantastic. Fantastic. So this is a book about Josephus' Jewish War. Great. The Jewish War is Josephus' superbly evocative account of the Jewish revolt against Rome, which was crushed in 70 CE. That's AD 70 to you and me, with the siege of Jerusalem and the destruction of the temple. In the latest edition of the Lives of Great Religious Books, Martin Goodman describes the life of this text, from its composition in Greek for a Roman readership to the myriad ways it touched the lives of Jews and Christians over the span of 2 millennia. Fantastic. Okay. All right. Well, we ended. This is a fine mail haul, but we ended with the one that I'm going to read now. The one that I'm going to read today. That's always an active interest of mine. Is a mail haul going to throw up a book that I am going to want to read immediately? Several of these are. 3 of them are 2020, and the rest are strong candidates. But this one wins out. So there you go. That's great. All right. So we have that is our mail haul. What have we got here? We have The Accursed Tower, Crusades History. We have The Mutual Admiration Society, Dorothy Sayers and her friends. We have Give Me Liberty by Richard Brookhiser, a writer I really like. We have Freethinker, a biography of Helen Hamilton Gardner, that comes out in the new year. We have Sovietistan. Sounds like sort of intrepid travel writing in places that aren't very hospitable to travelers, of former satellite Soviet republics. And then Citizen Reporters, about S.S. McClure, but also about Ida Tarbell, which is great. And lastly, a reception study, a sort of textual study of Josephus' The Jewish War. That's great. That's the one I'll read first. Probably followed by the Crusade book because it will only take an hour. So there you go. That is our last mail haul of the week. There was not a stitch of fiction in it, and that's fine by me. So I will wrap this up, and I will see you soon. Thank you, BookTube.